and to say that Frederick was anxious would be an understatement. As an escaped slave, he knew his life was on the line. If he were caught, he would be tortured, possibly shot, or torn apart by vicious dogs to be made an example of. His plan was to avoid being noticed by jumping on the train just as it was leaving the station from Baltimore, Maryland, a slave state, to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a free state. Once on board, he would sit segregated with the other black passengers in the Negro car. He hoped that the jostle of the train and the busyness on board would prevent the conductor from noticing the discrepancies in his papers. This would be assuming he wasn't recognized by someone and captured or arrested at the border. To fool the conductor, Frederick managed to secure borrowed papers from a local free sailor. And to play the part, he dressed in a sailor style with a red shirt, hat, and cravat. If he was lucky, the combination of papers, outfit, and his knowledge of ships — he was forced to work at a shipyard for some time — would be enough to throw off suspicion. When the conductor came, Frederick passed him papers with a prominent seal on them, demonstrating their authenticity. With hardly a look, the conductor moved on, and Frederick had made it through his first challenge. Over the next day, he would go from train to ferry to train to steamboat landing at Philadelphia. At each port, he avoided the possibility of police or bounty capture, and the numerous men who, with a long enough glance, would recognize him. After arriving at Philadelphia, he boarded one last train to New York, and by the next morning, he was a free man. 3 years later, Frederick, now going by the last name Douglas to avoid recapture, accepted an invitation to attend a meeting of the American Anti-Slavery Society, AASS. It was hosted by William Lloyd Garrison, the publisher of the abolitionist paper, The Liberator, and co-founder of the organization. Douglas was invited to share his story with the crowd. When Garrison heard Douglas's words, he immediately knew that Douglas could become an important figure in the movement. What Douglas could have never predicted that day was thanks to the influence equation and the power of an invitation, two ideas we will explore in detail. His public speaking and writing would play a critical role in the movement to end slavery, the election of Abraham Lincoln, and the freedom he and his fellow black men, women, and children deserved. Gene's goal and the abolitionists' goals were clearly different, which is why I chose their stories. They were separated not only by more than a century, but also by race, religion, culture, and objectives. Gene was committed to the very personal struggle to help people of all walks of life find health. After all, at least 2.8 million people die due to obesity-related issues every year. And the abolitionists were fighting for the social and moral obligation to give freedom and equality to humans in bondage. Even though their journeys and missions were incredibly different, what led them to succeed was the same thing. They found a way to bring people together and create deep and meaningful connections between them. I came to realize the importance of creating meaningful relationships through a very personal journey. By my late 20s, I had mounting debt, a failed startup, I was overweight, and I was struggling in the greatest economic downturn we had seen in more than half a century. I had become the poster child for not living up to his potential. Fortunately, I was able to piece together what Jean realized in her weight loss program and the strategy the AASS used to spread their message by looking at scientific research. I examined studies on human behavior, neuroscience, economics, and decision-making in hopes of developing personal and career success. And for me, the results were life-changing. In fact, it was so compelling, it led me to a career as a behavioral scientist, consultant, and researcher. What I did with these insights was strange to say the least. I convinced complete strangers, many of them among the most influential people across various industries, to cook me dinner. Over the course of a decade, this dinner developed into what many consider the most exclusive dining experience in the world. We host 12 strangers at a time, but there's a catch. Not only do the guests cook the meal together, but as they do, they can't talk about their careers or even give their last names. Once seated to eat, attendees discover their fellow guests are all industry leaders, from Nobel laureates, celebrities, and Olympic medalists, to award-winning musicians, artists, and even the occasional member of a royal family. This experience became known as